Hey, this is your boy Jay Steve from the Soul Fresh Podcast. And before we get started, make sure you go to YouTube, smash that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. Now that that's out the way, let's get it.
All right, welcome back to the Soul Fresh Podcast. I'm your host, BK.
And I'm your host, Jay Steve.
Jay Steve, what we got going on today?
Hey, brother, we have some good topics we're going to be discussing today. DA, the governor, some other things we're going to get into as well.
Yeah, we got a friend of the podcast, Erikka Williams. We got her joining us today, and we're going to get into some great conversations. We're going to talk about law. We're going to talk about some of the things that she advocates for, and also our shady governor. I'm not going to be. I'll take the responsibility and be able to call him shady because he is, in my personal opinion. Especially after doing a little bit of research on him, it's like he's just been kind of habitual with just voter suppression
all over.
And if you remember back during when he first ran for governor, I just did that again, and so he just ran for governor. There was some shady stuff there, about him not wanting to recuse himself from his position with Secretary of State, and still ran for governor. So it's like, how can you run for governor but still be in the position of the person who is in charge of the votes? And
then introducing also during the pandemic that one of the biggest voter suppression bills in the history of the state, which caused a lot of big time movie companies and billions of dollars to want to leave our economy, which was actually boosting our state.
Yeah. So we're going to get into to several different things, but as you know, we just like to get on here and just have a conversation. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and bring Erikka to the table. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Welcome.
Glad to be here.
All right. So as we start off each podcast with, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Erikka Williams. I'm an attorney. I practice here in Houston County. I work at the Williams Law Group. We're here on Green Street. And I'm a mom. I've got two little kids that go to school here in Houston County. And I'm really excited to be here.
Great. So Williams Law Group, is that a coincidence that that's your last name and your husband is a lawyer, right?
Yes. So the Williams Law Group is my husband's law firm. He started almost 20 years ago. Yeah. He's right down the street from Northside High School, which is the high school that he graduated from. Yeah. And he's always been real intentional about having a business on this side of town. I joined the firm in 2020 after I left the district attorney's office, and so we do work together. Okay.
I've always been curious to know, one lawyer, but when you're married to a lawyer, I imagine just a whole day of just debates and how does that work? Just real quick, because seriously, I imagine that everything becomes like a debate, even over a cooking or
This is the reason I didn't get groceries, right?
Well, it's funny. I know a lot of lawyer couples, and it's really not like that at all. People just presume. People say all the time, I should have been a lawyer. I like to argue. Well, really, lawyering is not always about arguing. Sometimes it really is about, negotiating. Right. The funny thing to me is when it's reflected in our children. So you can definitely tell, especially with my son, that he is the child of lawyers because he is constantly trying to negotiate things and trying to, find, little ways around whatever little rule we have. So it's definitely reflected in the children, not so much between us.
He's going to be ready for the debate team when he gets up there.
Well, his father was a master debater, so he'll be ready.
Now, did you do debate?
I did not. I did theater in high school. So
it's so funny that you didn't do debate. I talked to a lot of people that are attorneys today, and I asked them, hey, were you in debate in high school? No, actually, I wasn't. And I was like, that's so weird. You would think more people that were in the debate team would end up becoming attorneys, but a lot of them actually don't. They just like to
it seems like
that at school.
So for me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just going to say, it seems like that pathway is debate, lawyer, politics.
Yeah, and it is for a lot of people. For me, I was exposed to law at an early age because my best friend's father was a well-known criminal defense attorney in the city of Cleveland. He was one of the best. And because of my relationship with her and my exposure to him, I got to do my senior project at his law firm. So I really got exposed to the law through that. So the fact that I didn't participate in debate really wasn't a hindrance to me.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. I was going to ask you, like, so law, was that, did you go to it or did it come to you?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, as a child, you want to be what you see. So at some point, I wanted to be a teacher because my father was in education. And at one point, I wanted to be stand-up comedian. I still don't know how that happened, but that was on my list of things I wanted to do as a child.
You still got time.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
Don't be T.I. though.
T.I. can be a comedian.
Yeah.
Anybody.
Well,
He's
I think the fact that I'm probably only funny to myself is why I haven't gone anywhere with that. But with my best friend, she ended up an attorney as well.
Right,
so
right.
she and I, we actually went to rival high schools, and we ended up, did the fly get me? We ended up both going to law school around the same time. She went a year before me. I went into prosecution. She went into public defense work, and she's up north and she's a judge now. But I mean, we just always, yeah, it's amazing. She's a federal magistrate now. So
Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
It seems like more prosecutors versus defense attorneys tend to get the higher, what they call them, lawyer seats, I guess you would say, or political seats within the court system. Is that like a myth, or is that really how it is?
I think that there's definitely a trend towards prosecutors ascending to the bench, especially in states, like with the fact that we have a Supreme Court justice that was once a public defender. This is the first time this has ever happened. So I don't know why that is or why that happens, but it does tend to happen.
Okay.
I know, when I started, I think House and DA's office back in early 2000, people didn't really leave there unless they were going someplace like the bench. So
Right.
We've got two superior court judges that were at the district attorney's office at some point. We've got a state court judge here in Houston County that was at the district attorney's office. Our county solicitor was at the DA's office too. So some of that is, I guess it's just a pathway.
I was going to say,
the bench.
what about, is it easier to network with those people? Because they're typically all located in the same office, your judges, your DAs. Well, I guess public defender's office is in the same office too sometimes.
Same building.
Yeah, same
Not-
building.
yeah.
Yeah, same building. But I don't know, you're an employee of the state versus when you're in private practice or public defender. Is that technically...
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because I've never been in I've never been in a position where I've had to make the decision or recommendation on someone to have one of these positions. It just typically, it seems as if more people come from prosecutors' offices to go on to become judges.
Gotcha.
So you think since the new Supreme Court justice that was newly elected, you said she used to be public defender, that's where she started from. Do you think more people will start wanting to say, hey, I will go and be a public defender or be on the defense side versus they might have wanted to be a prosecutor before? Because everybody wants to be a prosecutor,
Well, not really.
I mean, my father's he was a defense attorney, but all the other people that I do speak to, a lot of them, the money isn't really there on the defense side, and they get into the stuff like that.
Well, I know for the public defenders that I know and I work, they do it because they absolutely love to do it. This is what their passion is for, because it certainly is not for the money or for the prestige. When you're in private practice, especially if you have a small firm like we do, you don't always get to pick and choose who your clients are, but public defenders have no choice in who their clients are. And so you really have to really want to do that. And I think that the fact that you see someone, or you're seeing more people that used to have that position ascending to higher heights, like becoming magistrate judges and becoming district court judges and now coming to the Supreme Court, I think I don't know that it will encourage more people to apply, but maybe more people will feel less discouraged about applying.
Okay. Yeah. So before we move on, but just on the low, I low key wanted to be an attorney, when I was growing up, because that was my high school job. Like for 11th and 12th grade, I worked for a lawyer here, local attorney here in Warner Robins, and it was a great experience. I got to be with her all the time when she was in court. You know, of course, I was like her bag guy. So not bad, but bag. So I was walking the courtroom carrying a whole bunch of files behind her. And so, and, you know, getting to go to different courthouses by myself and make copies. And of course, you know, she did a variety of things, which was, you know, from divorce to bankruptcy to workers' comp. And I got to meet a lot of attorneys that ended up doing other things in the county, like Rob Toss. I know you're familiar with him. So he was actually, when he was just an attorney, I was kind of worked for him as well, but really he was just one of the associates. So every now and then I would do some errands for him.
Well, it's not too late. It is not too. I tell people all the time, when I was in law school, I was in people in my 1L class. There was one man, I remember him. He was in his 60s. It was his lifelong dream to be, and I know a lot of other later in life careers in law are enhanced by the fact that you've had a different career first. So especially like a lot of nurses go on to become attorneys, and they typically become personal injury attorneys because they've got that insight into how the medical profession is supposed to handle things, and that helps, because if they can, you know, me looking at a file and trying to decipher what doctor's notes mean versus someone that already knows how to read that, that is a bonus. So don't rule it out. It's definitely can still do it.
They probably see a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm serious. They probably see so much bad stuff happening in the hospital. Like, girl, I'm going to law school.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we'll do a quick recap to go back to the beginning. So,
Okay.
A couple of years ago, you ran a great race. And, you know, unfortunately, it didn't come out. We didn't get the turnout that we wanted. And if you go back to the Larry Curtis podcast, we put some numbers out there. So, you know, I just think there are several different things that may have occurred or whatever. But then something shady occurred. So the current DA, well, not the current, the guy who won, he won, which 6 months into a term, 4 months, he retired.
Technically 9 months, but yes.
Yeah.
Right.
That once again, that's shady as well. So then we had that. So then we come to the situation where, okay, he retires. So now the governor has to step into place. And so based on the law, it looks like, I guess under Georgia Code Title 45, Chapter 545-5-3-2, or point 2, that the district attorney shall serve until their successors are duly elected and qualified. Vacancies shall be filled by appointment of the governor. So tell us about what happened as far as how do we get here, and let's talk about what's going on.
Oh, sure. The other part too, right quick. And no, she's probably gonna answer it. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So like you were mentioning, in 2020, I ran against my former boss, George Hartwig, and we came really close to winning, less than 3,000 votes in what they used to consider a stark red county. Was very impressive. I actually outperformed President Biden. So we had good numbers. We had a lot of cross-party support because of the issues that I was raising about the backlog and the inability to do anything about the backlog and the people leaving the office because of the mismanagement, everything that was going on. So I quit the day after the election. Once, I want to say even before the results were certified, but I knew that no matter what, my time with the DA's office was over. Yeah. It just wasn't gonna work out. So I didn't think anything of it much. Everyone was asking me, so are you gonna run again? And my response was always gonna be, well, I got 4 years to decide, because if you haven't ever run an election before, it takes a lot out of you. I mean, it just takes a lot.
Yeah, and not to cut you off, and we talked about mental health a little bit with Mike Jones, and we actually had that discussion about how an election, we're going to be doing this all day. Yeah. This is the first time for everything.
You know, pause. Just pause it. I'm going to kill that thing.
No, you're good.
It's okay.
Yeah. So, but I will edit that out.
Yeah.
So, but we talked with Mike Jones, and we talked about mental health, and he actually, you know, had a situation where, you know, it became detrimental to him and how much it took out of him. And I didn't really evaluate it and think about what you guys go through in running this campaign, and I guess it's not, because I always think about the loss, but I guess it's not just the loss. It's everything that you went through. You're thinking, you got a lot of time on your hands now, and then you just start thinking like, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Yeah,
if I had just you start looking at your numbers and you're like, oh, well, I really did not perform well in Perry. If I had only, gone to Perry more, then maybe the outcome. I will chase those 2,800 votes probably for the rest of my life. But I also tell people too, it was a little different for me because I spent 18 and a half years in that office, and I was really personally invested in trying to make things work out. And then when they didn't, and it seemed like everybody just sort of moved on, it was hurtful. But I will say, though, like when you're running, especially because of the hyper partisan relationship that we have right now with, the parties just at each other's throats all the time, it's really difficult when you have people coming and they're attacking and impugning your character, and they don't know anything about you other than the fact that you have a D behind your name. They're I had people, professing to be Christians. Like you go to their face, you can't help yourself. Somebody put something nasty on you. The first thing you do, you go to their Facebook page, and then it'll be something like Jesus loves me, or Jesus saves, or God bless America, or whatever. and then you're like, okay, but now you're calling me all kinds of things just because we don't agree politically. And it was often about things that would not even impact, the DA's race. I mean, I never once looked at a case and said, oh, well, I'm not going to seek justice for this person because we don't agree about, abortion or something like, crazy. But that's really, you have to learn to kind of separate yourself from that.
Those Christians are rough, ain't they?
They can be. They really can be. Like, they just I am a Christian. And so for someone to question my Christianity because I don't practice it the way that they do, it was hurtful. It really was. And especially because I was... I felt like I was coming from not a position of a moral high ground, but I was really just kind of running because I wanted the office to do better because I had worked there for so long, and I saw the potential that we could have.
You actually cared. I
did, and like I tell people all the time when they ask me if I was going to run again, it was like, I don't know. I don't know if I have the heart for politics. But the question that you asked was, so what happened next? So apparently, Mr. Hartwig decided he did not wish to complete his term that he just won. And for those that don't know, a district attorney's term in Georgia is 4 years.
4 years. Yep.
Okay, so about 6 to 8 months into his term, he decides that he's not going to run.
Right.
He notifies the governor as is required, and the governor has the option to accept the resignation or not accept the resignation. So he sent a letter to the governor in August, and the governor accepted the resignation effective September 1. Okay. So what should happen under the statute is that the governor should appoint someone to fill that position until such time as a special election can be held, because the Georgia Constitution says the district attorney shall be elected by the people. And the Georgia Constitution also says that the governor shall make prompt appointments. Okay?
Prompt. Like it says
like it literally says prompt.
But also it uses the word immediately.
So there are some arguments, and there have been some cases where because a lot of times in the Constitution, when they say something is prompt or when something has to be done, it's in the code section. So I think for like some sort of congressional seat or whatever, there's like deadlines if the governor has to step into a point, it's got to be done within 30 days. Well, with the DA's race, there's no definition of prompt. So then how do you define what's prompt? And that's where what you consider shadiness is what really happens. So the governor, using his authority as the executive official of the state, decided not to make a prompt appointment.
Which it clearly says, a reminder, immediately after someone resigns or after an election.
And so what he did, though, I mean, and that's why, you could sort of argue that he wasn't prompt, was because he immediately solicited applications for replacement. And I know of several attorneys, local attorneys, that applied. I even applied, even though I knew I wasn't going to get it because I'm a Democrat, it's a Republican. It's his, this is his seat to fill.
Right.
What he did instead was wait several months, and then he appointed someone that cannot take the oath of office until sometime in May.
Right, because he hasn't completed the time yet.
Right.
That's allotted.
Right. So he is currently the acting district attorney. So he is running the office, and but the issue with that is that because he cannot swear the oath, the Secretary of State's office says, well, the appointment's not official until he can swear the oath. And why that matters is because of there's a specific statute that applies to when the DA special election has to be. We cannot have a special election within the guidelines established by the statute because the governor has decided to appoint someone that cannot take the oath of office for another month and a half. So, I know some people might have seen the story on the media that they didn't, I tried to actually let the media know they don't really understand and they didn't really see the problem with it. But the problem for me is that it is preventing the voters of Houston County to be able to elect the district attorney of their choice.
Yes.
And let me just say that the gentleman that is running the office now, Mr. Kendall, if the governor had appointed somebody else, Mr. Kendall could still run. Nothing about what happened would have prevented Mr. Kendall from running.
Hold on. But you can't run.
No, because there's no race.
Right, because he just completely got rid of the race altogether.
And because he has a history, Governor Kemp has a history of doing this. And I'll give you another example.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Deborah Gonzalez had to sue in order for her to have the race that she eventually won in Athens because Governor Kemp canceled her special election. The district attorney in Columbus. I'll give you another example. Okay, so Mark Jones, who was the elected district attorney, some of y'all might remember him. They kind of called him the legal weed guy, and he was the one that was doing the donuts in the court in the Civic Center in Columbus or whatever. Well, he ended up pleading guilty to a felony, and because of that, he had to step down. And the acting district attorney, his chief assistant by operation of law, became the district attorney. Now, again, because the governor did not make a prompt appointment, there may not be a special election in that race either, because dependent on when the appointed person is, who is actually a friend of mine, is a good attorney, and I'm not choosing sides on this one. I'm just saying as far as having the race and letting the voters decide. There may not be time to have a special election in that race. And so the question that people should ask themselves is why? Why doesn't the governor, this has nothing to do with Mr. Kendall, has nothing to do with his abilities to do the job. I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm glad that he has been successful, that he has been able to get the people to come back to the DA's office and the cases are moving. And that's great. But the seat was not, the seat was not his. And so that was my frustration with it, is that, and we don't have to spend a whole lot of time talking about it, but the frustration of it is that, when you have 70,000 Houston County citizens voting on a race, and you're within 3 points from winning, and that 3 points includes probably 10,000 from the other party, because I had a big gap between myself and some other Democrats that ran that race. It's crazy. Why would the governor not want there to be a race? Because all the people that applied could run.
It's ludicrous because one, it just seemed like so many violations of what the Constitution says were just violated. Especially, and we talked about this off mic about how one of the rules is you must be qualified at least for 3 years. Right.
So you have to be an attorney for 3 years in order to take that oath.
So he's not even qualified at the moment until May 8th or May.
Sometime in May of this year.
That's the crazy thing about it. So he's not even a real
Right. And it's interesting because there are certain things that have to. There are certain things like there's some cases that there are cases out there that say that an oath really, the fact that you haven't sworn an oath really. It doesn't negate the things that you do if they're done otherwise legally. But if an oath means anything, then you should have to take it. Mm-hmm. And again, there is nothing against Will Kendall personally.
Right. No.
Right, no.
He could still, if the governor had done the right thing, Will Kendall could still run.
Right. I understand that part, but I'm saying what's so just off the cuff, just
weird.
Out of nowhere,
it's
just
weird.
Yeah, just doing his own thing. He just creating rules on the fly.
Like
on his own.
Like seriously, like I mean, you have a candidate, someone who was the chief assistant district attorney, not in position, but then there's a guy who is now the current acting DA who's only been an attorney for 3 years. Mm-hmm. I mean,
and not even a full attorney yet.
The shadiness, but when
he's a full attorney.
Yeah,
he is a licensed attorney.
Yeah.
He just has not met the statutory minimum
he
qualifications
hasn't met the full requirements for the job.
Right.
For the job.
And see, just like you mentioned Gonzalez over in Oconee and or Athens, I guess. She sued, and then they actually took it to the Georgia Supreme Court. And she said she called on Kemp to fill the seat in time to put the appointee on the ballot. She said his delay had hindered reform efforts and put backroom deals hatched by Atlanta politicians before the people.
Yeah.
It's the same thing going on now.
Absolutely.
It's like something backdoor is obviously going on.
Yeah.
Of course.
To not let the people vote.
Well, my question for the governor, again, is always, why Houston County? Like, what is it? Because Governor Kemp is not from here.
Right. But
so how does he make the decision? Who has he spoken to that says that this is okay?
Because he knows this area down here still has that old money with those old ties to the old ways.
Yeah.
And Kemp knows that this area, you got farming, everything is in Houston County. Mm-hmm. You can boom out of this county if you really wanted to. But people stay away from here because they still know the old ways still dominate this area. And Kemp knows that. He may be stupid, but he ain't dumb.
Yeah, but also Houston County is a threat for Democrats are a threat for Houston County.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, as you see, things are changing and slowly starting to flip even in Houston County. Because Houston County is one of those counties that people actually pay attention to.
Yes.
Houston County, Albany, Atlanta area. Mm-hmm. We're making strides and becoming a threat.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that obviously that's voter suppression.
Well, I think it is.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at the briefs in the Gonzalez case, you will see that one of the arguments that she made was it's a violation of our constitutional right,
yes.
the right to have an opportunity to vote for the candidate of your choosing, and that's always been my issue because truthfully, if he had selected someone else, who knows who would have run. Mm-hmm. There's no, I mean, really, who knows who could have run? Somebody else that's better than all of us could have run, but we don't know because Governor Kemp took that from Houston County, and he didn't just take it from Democrats. I'm sure that there's a variety of people that listen to this podcast. He took the choice from the Republicans as well, because I know for a fact that there were at least 3 other statutorily qualified attorneys that ran for that position, that applied for that position.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I know you said you were frustrated about it. I was going to ask you how you felt about Kemp taking away that opportunity from you, but also, like you just said, he took that opportunity away from the community itself.
Well, and that's why I still talk about it. I know a lot of people are like, whatever, move on, you didn't get it, stop whining. No, that's not the point. The point is to let people know, especially because we have a governor's race coming up, you need to know what your elected officials, one, have the power to do, and how they exercise that power. Now, Brian Kemp has exercised his power to take away the power of the vote for people in Houston County.
Yes.
Period.
See, that's what I don't understand why people can't understand the narrative that you're trying to preach, is that by now it's bigger than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you got to see what is really going on, like these backdoor deals,
Right.
this shadiness. Like, how can you ignore that?
Right. I would hate to see, a bunch of challenges to whether or not charging documents are valid or search warrants that can only be signed by the DA are valid when they're being signed by someone that hasn't sworn the oath.
Right.
Facts.
I just,
Right.
again, it is not about.
Wow.
I didn't even think about that.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be me. It never had to be me.
So
Even
can
when we
those-
were talking about running, back before 2020, I said it doesn't have to be me. We just need someone in the office that's going to do the right thing. And I'm not saying that the people in the office are not doing the right thing now. What I'm saying is the governor chose to do the wrong thing, and the people in the office are doing the best that they can until things get finalized. In May, it sort of becomes a non-issue. Mr. Kendall swears his oath. He becomes a full-fledged district attorney. He serves out the rest of the term, and then in 2024 he'll run again. Someone may run against him, or maybe they won't. But the issue is the Georgia Code says what is supposed to happen when a district attorney does not complete and what I want you to understand too, and the reason is this kind of gets over some people's head, but before the Gonzalez case, the law that we're relying on is the 2018 law. So before 2018, the Georgia Code said something different about what was supposed to happen and when you were supposed to have a special election. So they made this law because they didn't like the way special elections were being run. So then they created this law that would allow the governor to make an appointment, and then their original intent was to give them a whole new term. So unelected district attorney, despite the fact that the Georgia Constitution says your DA is supposed to be elected by the people.
Right.
So and he's done it multiple times. And I will tell people I'm not a huge fan of Kemp. I know he's made some great judicial appointments. I will be the first to tell you he has appointed several qualified black women to the bench, including Justice Verda Colvin, who is currently on the Supreme Court in Georgia. But he has also used his executive authority to disenfranchise voters by delaying the appointment of DAs, delaying the appointment of judges, so that elections for those races cannot happen.
Right.
And I just have a problem with that.
About that statute that we're talking about, that Georgia Code 45-5-3.2, do you think it should be amended or completely eradicated?
Yeah, I think my problem with the statute is if the way that the governor is currently interpreting the statute to read, I think it's unconstitutional because it eliminates the special election that is supposed to happen. Now, if we wanted the governor to be able to just appoint a district attorney and they serve out the rest of the term, how do we fix that? We put that in the Georgia Constitution, and it says, the governor uses his executive authority to appoint, and that person shall serve out the rest of that term.
Right.
But the fact is that the legislature said no. What we want to happen is, if the term isn't completed, we want the governor to make an appointment, and we want to have a special election, and we want that special election to happen with the general. So it kind of gives you a timeline of when it should happen.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
But if the governor doesn't do what he's supposed to do, and he sits on his hands so that no special election can happen,
right,
I think that that's unconstitutional.
Right.
Unfortunately, I didn't have the resources or the time to try to argue that, but I do think that if that statute remains the same, and if Governor Kemp is reelected, I think you'll see more of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you'll see more of it. It's strategic. Even if it wouldn't, if he somehow does not win the election in November, I would not be surprised if you see people leaving the bench so that he can make appointments before he can leave. And I want to point out again that there's no definition in the state constitution about what prompt means, so you kind of have to look at the case law to determine that.
Yeah.
But when we had a vacancy when we had a vacancy on the Court of Appeals, he filled that like within 2 weeks. Yeah. So he can do it when he wants to, but he chose not to for Houston County, and that should be people. I don't care if you want to support if you supporting Abrams or if you supporting Perdue or Candace Taylor or even Kemp, but keep that in mind is what your elected officials do with the power that they have.
Right.
So when you're talking about amendments, so can you change the words like prompt and make it more specific, like within 45 days?
You would have to, but that would take a constitutional amendment. That would take a constitutional, because it's in amendment. Because that when I'm saying the governor shall make prompt appointments, I believe that's in Article 5 of the Georgia Constitution.
Yeah.
So now there are ways again that you can argue what promptness means. Like my argument is promptness means in enough time to not avoid a special election. But again, when you're in the middle of a pandemic, does prompt mean the next day? Does it mean 2 weeks? What does it mean?
Yeah.
And so for me, I think prompt just means so that it doesn't handicap the voters from being able to vote.
We got to be specific about words. Like if my wife says, when you get a chance. When you get a chance for me means I might.
Yeah, definitely.
It might not be today.
It might not be today. When I get a chance.
You gave me an option.
Yeah. Don't give me options. Give me specific times. I need specific. So we're going to move on real quick, but I noticed that that's nothing new as far as certain politicians in certain roles like judges and DAs where they will retire in the middle of a particular term just so, those are those backdoor deals so somebody can appoint who they want or whatever. But like I say, shady politics.
It happens all the time.
All right, but so before we leave that topic, we can't do anything about it. So the time is up. So what do we need to be on the lookout for, and how do we need to get the voters to understand, to pay attention to this in the future, and as far as how important this is when you're voting for your governor?
Well, share the podcast. I mean, really, a lot of people don't understand what your elected officials do. Most of the people don't know who their elected officials are. If you ask them who your DA is, or who your sheriff is, or who your attorney general is, most people don't know, and they don't understand. And so when it comes time to vote, they'll either skip those down ballot races, or they'll just vote for the incumbent because they don't really understand, and they think that there might not be any issues. So again, my problem on this particular issue is just making sure. I want people to know. I don't want people coming up to me saying, "Hey, I know Hartwig left. How come you didn't run?" And I'm like, well, "It's because I can't." That's just how it is. And explaining to them, how it happens. And mostly, when I tell people, they're shocked. They are like, "How could the governor think that it is okay to put someone that can't swear an oath in the highest office?"
And I want to go back right quick, just touch on that one quick second, then we'll move on, BK.
Take your time.
So he's not under oath as the district attorney. He hasn't been sworn in or anything like that.
He's under oath. Well, all assistant district attorneys swear an oath.
He's the interim.
He's the interim.
But you were talking about some paperwork or deals or whatever he has to sign or something like that. Now, what if a person say something went against them and they want to go back and challenge the fact that he wasn't fully
sworn?
Right.
Yeah,
fully
I'm
sworn.
not sure what the result of that would be, but
do you think that could be an issue in the future though? That people could say,
know.
"Hey, I remember when this guy was just the interim DA before he became the full."
Well, if he
DA.
was normal, like if the person was like, okay, so if you look at Columbus, okay, so Shanika Terry, I believe is her name. She was the acting DA when Mark Jones stepped down. So she swore the oath. She just wasn't elected, but she was the acting DA until such time as the governor made an appointment. So because she was able to swear the district attorney's oath, that's different from Houston County. So they could change documents and put things in her name that I don't think they can do in Houston County.
Right, because he hasn't been all the way put in like she already was.
Right.
I understand. That was the one point I want to touch back on, because I was just thinking to myself, that could get kind of ugly if somebody really wanted to challenge that.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know, because it's so unusual that something like this would happen. You know, this is not Houston County is not a small county. We're not there are rural counties that have no attorneys. Okay, so you could kind of understand if you're in a more rural area and there aren't, attorneys with 15, 20, 30 years of experience available. Right. That's not the case for Houston County.
No.
And even if your desire was for Mr. Kendall to become the DA because he was the one that was chief assistant and brought the office back together and got the cases moving and all that, that's fine. But you could still make a valid appointment so that there could be a race and Mr. Kendall could still run, because you only have to be qualified when you swear the oath, not when you run. So he will be qualified.
Right.
And so.
All right. So let's move on to,
okay.
I saw you recently did an interview with Hathaway Brown. So tell us about that. What is that?
Okay. So Hathaway Brown is an all-girls school in Cleveland, Ohio. And it's it's one of the best all-girls schools. I say that because I'm an alum.
Okay.
And so I participated. They had this program called the Notable Women Project. And basically what they're doing is encouraging their fourth grade girls to work on their speaking skills and learning more about alumna. And so I was interviewed by a fourth grade student.
I saw that on your Twitter.
Yeah. And it was just a great experience. I am a big proponent of girls' education.
Right.
I think it really shaped me and helped me feel, learn a sense of confidence that I may not have learned if I was in co-ed education. I started in the 6th grade, so right around that middle school time. So that was great for me because there was a lot of stuff that I didn't have to navigate around boys, which was awesome.
Didn't make middle school or junior high. So
it doesn't mean that I didn't have those same growing pains and didn't experience, bad things and sometimes bullying and all that stuff. It still happens in an all-girl environment, but
mean girls.
Some of the other things that are uniquely a woman's experience or a girl's experience, I was able to experience them around girls, and I love that.
Right.
So any chance that I have, I don't have a lot of money to give the school, but if they need volunteers for things, I'm happy to help.
Okay, cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. So so let's talk about something else that you're very involved in.
Okay.
And this is a serious matter. You're very involved in domestic violence. So let's talk about your advocacy for domestic violence and if there's a reason behind that.
Well, my reasoning behind being involved in working to combat domestic violence was just my experience with the district attorney's office, having the opportunity to prosecute cases that involve domestic violence, having the opportunity to work with victims that didn't want to prosecute or were unsure or scared to prosecute, or being able to find some alternatives to traditional prosecution when appropriate so that the family could be maintained. So that's kind of where that came from. The same with child abuse. I was on the child abuse task force when I worked for the district attorney's office, and so I had an opportunity to work very closely with our child resource center, which is the Rainbow House.
Yeah.
And one of the things I loved doing was being able to give trainings on the signs of child abuse. I did mandated reporter training for Houston County teachers. I like to talk, so it's just real easy, to.
Well, I always used to hear your name pop up all the time because I sat on the board of directors for the Rainbow House. So, they would always mention you and, give you praises and whatnot. And so I knew you had a lot of experience with domestic violence and child abuse.
Yeah.
That's a sad thing that, we still have to fight that.
Oh, definitely. We have
to
not only combat it, but we have to really talk about it and make people understand different perspectives about it. And a lot of people, especially with domestic violence, you hear a lot of people say, well, if a man hit me, I wouldn't stay around. But the longer you work in domestic violence cases or work with people that are some survivors of domestic violence, you understand that leaving is not easy. One of the trainings that I went to a long time ago was really an eye-opener for me, was it was an exercise where they gave you an envelope of money. Of course, you didn't know how much money was in it, but they gave you an envelope of money, and then they gave you a scenario, and then you kind of had to decide what were you going to spend your money on. And so the purpose of it was to kind of help you understand why the decision to leave is not always that easy. You know, if you're leaving, where are you going?
Right.
And if you're going, how are you going to pay to live someplace else? So if you're staying on a friend's couch, if you have children, can the kids come? Will the kids be safe? If you have a pet, you know, is the pet going to be safe? And people might say, well, who cares about the dog? Get to safety. But a lot of people don't realize how many animals are abused in domestic violence situations, because they are often one of the first lines that the abuser will use. Like they will abuse the animal to show you what is going to happen to you.
So true.
Yeah. I mean, I had a case once where a guy choked the life out of a kitten in front of the his wife and his child to send a message, you know, about, you know, talking back or leaving or whatever. So a lot of we really have to learn empathy in trying to understand that it's not easy to leave. I mean, it's actually the most dangerous time for a woman when she decides to leave, and really leave is the most dangerous time.
Right. It's a lot of times, does it have to do with, I just had on the tip of my tongue, the syndrome where someone is, where their captor has them and they end up falling in love, or just
Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome. A lot of times,
I just asked you that the other day. Remember?
Huh?
I think I just asked you that the other day. You told me.
Oh, yeah. Well, Stockholm syndrome. I think of it sometimes because I know a person that I know that's been in an abusive relationship, and they try and go away, and then they get back into it, and they go away, and then they, you know, they'll tell me, you know, sometimes it's not as easy just to say, hey, you need to get away. It's not good for you. Your life is just getting worse and worse and worse. But I also feel it's more so like a Stockholm type syndrome a lot of times. Do you see that in a lot of the cases as well?
You can, you can see situations where people become that entwined with the people that are abusing them. But you also have to look at some of the other things too, like what were the relationships that they observed. And even now, like if you just look at what is put out in the media as to like what is part of a valid relationship, it's celebrated. Violence, cursing out, yelling, cheating. That's all normal. It's all normalized.
No loyalty anymore.
Right, yeah. Nobody, like, you know, I was watching or reading on Twitter or something where they were going in on Sierra because she, you know, she's found happiness. You know, she's found happiness and she's not, you know, messing around Future anymore. And it's kind of like I think they called her husband a square. And I'm like, you're a square, corny, because
NFL player,
because he professes his love and
take care of his kids.
Right. I mean,
take care of somebody else's
stays out of the street.
So toxic.
Isn't on social media.
And people were really going in like, yeah, this is like, why would you, you know, pick, you know, Russell Wilson over Future? And I was like, well, corn me up, because I mean, I just, you know, it just,
sign me up.
It does, it didn't make any sense, but
sign me up. There was a lot of people on that though.
Yeah,
the feed underneath. I'll take that.
Yeah, right. That's what I was like, I'll be corny. I'm corny.
I mean, I thought it was cute when they switched teams and they came out and she had on a little orange suit and she's like, we're gonna be Broncos now.
Sierra would never get mad at Russell Wilson for not walking on stage and slapping somebody for making a joke about her. No. She's not toxic like that. But that's a whole nother story.
I know. You can do a whole separate podcast on that mess.
We chose not to touch that one.
Yeah, we're gonna leave that one alone.
Yeah.
We made a few posts about it. But,
we said our piece on social media.
Yeah. I told somebody on social media too, the night that it happened, I know we're not gonna talk about it, but the night that it happened, I got on a space, and on Twitter they have spaces, which is kind of like Clubhouse, but it's on Twitter, and so you already know, like when you're on Twitter, people just wild out. We were on Twitter space for like an hour and a half, just talking about the incident, and everybody was saying from their perspective what they thought. And I said, okay, well, we had our lemon squeeze that night. I'm not talking about it anymore. I'm not, you know, it's done. It's over. Whatever happens, it's over. It's rich people problems. I'm not rich, so let them handle it.
I think that's what made me, when I read that, if somebody put that in perspective, I was like, you know what? You're right. This ain't none of my business.
Right.
Because guess what? They still all good.
Right. They're still all rich.
I still got to go to work.
Way above my pay grade.
Thank you. We sit here fighting back and forth with strangers over people that could buy and sell us. It just makes no sense.
I will say, you know, she's a little toxic.
Yes.
That's just my opinion. Because I watched the other video that they showed out where it was somebody taking a camera phone video from behind.
Yeah.
So, and you know, to me, she looks like she was laughing the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's like, wait a minute. And then she just clearly put out another statement saying, you know, like, look, I didn't tell him to do that.
Right.
I don't need nobody protecting
Now,
him.
now she's going
Like,
back. Ooh.
And then now they say he's in like some kind of mental hospital, taking a break, just trying to release some of the stress.
Well, that relationship has always been.
Happen.
That relationship has always appeared to me toxic. I mean, even years ago when they were first interviewed about the relationship, like the first thing I remember her saying about him was that she thought he was corny.
Yeah.
And like, it to me just always seemed like a diff. But again, rich folks, if she likes it, I love it.
Yeah,
you know, and if he likes it, I love it.
And this will be the last thing I say about this. We'll be off.
We always say that.
Yeah.
I still feel like this though. If Will Smith if he didn't have that much power, that was a power trip. Mm-hmm. People say there's power moves. Mm-hmm. That was a power trip.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like he knows how much power he really has. He knows who he sat in the rooms with. Mm-hmm. And behind closed doors in the Illuminati offices and stuff like that. But I think that's what it really comes down to. He just took that power, but I'm just sad that he took that power out on another brother.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
Well, there's so many angles. I know we said we weren't going to talk about it, but there's just so many different angles to it. I mean, there's the angle of, you know, the people that feel like this could, you know, slap him, but slap him backstage, you know, or slap him at the after party, not like live on the Oscars. And you see a lot of toxic masculinity coming out of people that are saying, well, you gonna slap somebody who makes a joke about the hair, but you're not gonna slap the person that was, you know, having an entanglement and all that.
Right. Right.
Again, rich folks problems. They will be all right. And
we weren't even invited.
Right.
So we have nothing to say.
They will not be paying my student loan debt.
Yeah, exactly.
And neither with Biden lying. But sorry, did I say that?
Now he never said that he was going to pay off them student loans. Let me just say this. Let me just say he only. I think he said maybe like 10,000, but he has. If in all seriousness, if you qualify, and this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I'm going to put it out there anyways. If you qualify or think you may qualify for public student loan forgiveness, you really need to go to the website and make sure that you have have your student loans in the right loan, and that you get it can't hurt to check, because I applied. I am not currently employed by a government agency anymore, but under that waiver, the payments that I did make may qualify. So a lot of people don't even realize that the waiver allows that, because what happened under the previous administration, the Trump administration, they literally made the rules so specific that a lot of people's applications got rejected. So you're talking about someone that may have made 119 payments on time, but one of those was late. Okay, no, your forgiveness is denied. So now they've gone back and check with your friends, because I have friends right now that are getting notices that their student loan has been forgiven because they made those 120 payments, and they got credit for it. So it's not that, and these are people that have worked for. The 120 is 10 years. So worked 10 years and made 10 payments. So it's not, these people are not being given anything. They took jobs that should have qualified for public forgiveness, and now they're getting it. So I really, truly encourage people to get on that Fed loan page, look it up, because I'll tell you, I get off my soapbox in just a minute, but I will tell you that my student loans were through Sallie Mae, which became Navient. Well, when I got out of law school, I couldn't afford my payments. So they guided me into a consolidation loan that I thought, from what they were telling me, was my best option.
That's what got me.
But that was their best option, not my best option.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people were guided by these companies that were getting these risk-free student loans, making all kinds of money on capitalized interest and high interest for these loans. And when they loosened or changed the rules back in 2007 that would have made more people eligible for that student loan forgiveness, they didn't guide people to reconsolidate. In fact, they told them, like they told me, no, you should just stay in this loan program. This is better for you. So they're really going to have to look at how these loan companies operated. Some of them, and Sallie Mae in particular, Navient, they just paid a settlement because they were doing predatory stuff. They were given loans, and the particular loans were not, they were to like for-profit colleges and all. But that's like, that's a whole nother podcast topic. But my long of the short of it is, if you worked in public interest law, so if you've been, prosecutor, public defender, a teacher, you worked for a 501c3 full-time for over 10 years and you've been paying your student loans, please go check and see. You just may qualify for loan forgiveness. And my understanding is if the loans are forgiven, the balance that is forgiven, you don't pay a tax penalty on.
And see, I tell some, younger guys every now and then, because, we're haunted by the whole student loan thing. My job paid for mine. So I was like, that's the new move right there. I was like, try to get on with the company that will pay for you to go to school. That's just me. Now, still go to school and do it the traditional way. But I said there's another option, which is try to get on with a company that, doesn't have certain requirements. And then also, when you first get onto a job, ask, do they have a education assistance program? If they do, take advantage of it. Let them pay for it. Right. And then start making, your future moves and start making plans and start, navigating. Like even Walmart. If you're working at Walmart, take advantage of their education assistance program, let them pay for it. Then you'll leave out of here with debt free or whatever as far as student loan goes.
And if you get that assistance or if you get that forgiveness, go ahead and invest that money because it was already coming out of your check anyway. So you won't miss it.
Okay. All right. So before we wrap it up, let's talk about lawyer. So what's the best way to find a lawyer, or if you need a lawyer, or, I know it's one of those tricky situations because it's almost kind of like a very saturated market. Oh, yeah. And they're just, they're everywhere. So, and I had a situation where I had an attorney or lawyer and for a car accident. And, I don't really think he did things in the best interest. I actually had to report him to the bar. Oh, wow. And
you had a lawyer.
He was actually very notable in a certain county. So, but he didn't immediately pay my bills. And it seemed like behind closed doors, he was trying to still negotiate more money with the hospital. I was in a car accident. Okay. And so he was trying to negotiate money. So after we settled, I got my check. But then I had the people keep calling me saying, you need to pay this. I'm like, I don't need to pay nothing. You need to call my lawyer. Like he has to check. Like we got a settlement. So I got my money, he got his money, and he's supposed to send you his check.
Right. Exactly. As it's supposed to go. He
never sent it. And what I found out was he was still trying to negotiate more money. And I thought you couldn't negotiate once it's been settled. So let's just talk about the process of just finding that best attorney. How do we go down that path?
So when you're looking for an attorney, most of the time what people will either do word of mouth or get on Google and look for an attorney. So one thing that people should know is that different attorneys practice different laws. They specialize in different areas. And so an attorney that may be awesome for you for a personal injury may not be awesome for you on a criminal case or a divorce case. You also have to kind of look at, when you're looking for an attorney, is your personality. What are you going to need? Right. Are you a real needy person? Are you going to need your lawyer to be at your beck and call? Can I don't care how much it costs me, but if I'm going to call you every day, can I count on you to return my phone calls? Or on the flip side, am I one of those people that I'm gonna pay you to handle it? I don't want to hear about it till it's done. And so there's different attorneys. We do at the Williams Law Group. We do criminal law, we do family law, we do juvenile law, we do estates, some estate work too. But one thing we're really good about is if somebody calls us and asks us for something that we don't do, we make sure that we send them someplace that does. We don't just take on stuff to just be like, okay, well, I'll learn it as we go.
Right.
when you're looking for an attorney, there are things to consider, like attorneys cost money. So you have to realize that in order for your attorney to begin work, you're going to have to pay a retainer. And whatever your retainer agreement is, keep paying. Please keep paying your attorney. Don't make us have to chase you.
It's not like the movies where they say, just give me $1.
Yeah.
Right. No, yeah. So, and if you can't afford an attorney, there are programs out there. There's Georgia Legal Services.
Yeah.
There's also Middle Georgia Access to Justice. All of these places you can find if you get on Google that may be able to assist you. But when you're looking for an attorney, you also want to look at where your case is and how far you think your attorney is willing to travel. I typically handle cases in Houston, Bibb, Peach, Crawford. Clarence goes a little farther out, Dooley and Crisp and all. Some attorneys say, I'm only practicing in Houston, you know. Right. So that's another thing when you're setting up that initial consultation with your lawyer. Kind of figure out, you know, they're going to ask you, where is your case? You know, and what status is your case in? Are you ready to file? You know, a lot of times we do family law, so a lot of times people will call and then they'll be like, well, I'm not really ready to file yet. And so then they'll kind of back off, and then what'll happen is their partner will file for divorce, and then it's like, I'm ready to go.
So a quick question on that. So being with the DA's office for so long, 18 years, how did you navigate into that space of practicing private, private law, whatever? So, like, what is your expertise?
It's taken a while to flip sometimes. So I do criminal cases. And I enjoy it. I like prosecution. Like, some people you won't stay in prosecution for real long if you don't really like it. Some people like to do it and kind of learn the ins and outs. It's the best way to learn how to try a case, being a prosecutor or public defender, because you're in court constantly. So for me, the hardest part for me was taking off those prosecutor glasses and putting on the defense attorney glasses, when, like, sometimes you just look at a case and you'd be like, as a prosecutor, I would not have charged that.
Yeah. Right. Hey, it's funny that you mentioned that. As I'm sitting here, you're talking, I'm sitting here.
Fly got me.
I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, like watching the Georgia, like, I'm a big court TV buff. I love watching court cases. And so, like with the George Floyd case, like, do you find yourself, just, I guess, zoning in, like, I wish I can, just get on there and
picking apart their case.
Pick it apart and do my thing. This is the way I would do it.
Sometimes I do. Most of the time, it's when I'm looking at local stuff. I'll be like, I wouldn't have charged that, or how come you didn't charge this? Sometimes, and it's kind of like, well, it is what it is. I think former prosecutors make great criminal defense attorneys, because we know what indictments are supposed to look like, and we also know, like, we have a good idea what a jury might do on a case. I also do juvenile. Because I love juvenile court.
You worked in juvenile.
I did. I cut my teeth in the juvenile court in Houston County. And I spent the first 4 or 5 years in juvenile court, and then I went to Superior Court for a couple years, and then, like, the replacement prosecutor would leave, and then I'd have to go back because I'd be the only one in the office that knew how to do juvenile. And then I would go back, and then something else would happen. So I went back and forth several times. In fact, my last year, the district attorney's office was in the juvenile court.
Yeah, I believe that's where you started out, right?
Yes.
Because when my mom was working there, I think that's when y'all were right across the hall.
Yes, that was my road dog. back then, we used to have, we were grant funded, and as part of our grant, we had to put on programs for the youth. So what I did like anger management and all kinds of programs, and we were able back then to purchase snacks and stuff for the kids. And so, we would she would help me set up the programs, even though she worked at the public defender's office at the time, but she would help me out a lot. So
cool.
Yeah.
One quick question: which side, since you've been on the prosecution side, now you're on the defense side, which side are you kind of comfortable with? Do you want to go back to that prosecution side, or are you kind of like, I kind of dig this defense side thing?
Well, I like the side that pays me. So currently, the side that pays me is criminal defense. But I like prosecution because I think it's important to have people that look like me in prosecution positions and people that have my life experiences.
Fair prosecution.
Well, I like to think so. Now, some of the defense attorneys may not think so, but I think my reputation as a prosecutor was always tough but fair. I always had a good relationship with my local law enforcement. And I never had any problems telling them, hey, you messed up. This is not a good search, or this is not a good charge. Or, sometimes talking with defense attorneys, I had a good relationship with most of the defense attorneys that I worked with. But I think because there's so much that can be done in the realm of prosecution, if allowed, I enjoy it. I love that there are so many avenues now for alternatives to prosecution. I love that there are resources that are available if we choose to use them to help pay for this kind of stuff. Because what people don't really understand is the criminal justice system is so top heavy that COVID really exposed how top heavy it is, because for over a year, in a lot of places, there were no trials. Nothing was going on. And a lot of people were being held. Right. People were being held. Just sitting in jail, waiting for their charges. And they couldn't have them because it wasn't safe to have juries. Well, now that the courts are opening back up, it's really, I think, incumbent on the prosecutors throughout the state to be looking at some of these cases and really saying, not is the juice worth the squeeze, but are the goals and aims of justice going to be met by continuing to prosecute this case, or are some of these cases some that we can look at and say time served and move on, or even just dismiss outright, or divert divert to a diversion program. And so one of the things, and I'm not, this is not a campaign thing, but just one of the things that I love to see, and DA Anita Howard in Bibb County is doing a lot. She is using forfeiture funds to do some of these programs, so alternatives to prosecution programs, and safe. She just had a program last week to help with the Safe Babies Initiative, teaching parents how to properly have their children in sleep, so that so that she doesn't have to prosecute. In the case if there's a death, is it a SIDS death, or is it a death that could have been avoided? Instead, she's using some of that funds that she got from illegal gambling, putting it back in the community. So one of the big problems I had with my last boss was that he was taking that money and he was using it to enhance police stuff. So buying stuff for the police, buying cameras for the courthouse. These are things, cameras for the courthouse, the safety thing definitely is important to provide safety to the people in the courthouse, but the county should pay for that. Buying stuff for law enforcement agencies. I love the police officers that I work with, but guess what? They have forfeiture funds too. Right. So we don't need to buy, more guns or whatever for them when they have, not only do they have they've got a large budget because they are law enforcement and they need that budget, but they also have the same access to forfeiture funds. So it used to really be a burr in my saddle when I would come for juvenile and I'd be like, okay, we're getting ready to do the county car wash. So DJJ, our DJJ here in Houston County is awesome. They created a community car wash where the youth that were either on probation or in a diversion program would spend 1 or 2 days of spring break washing cars for free in the community. And it was awesome because the county would donate the water. And so I would go to the DA and say, hey, we're having this great program. What can we do? Here's $200. Okay, which is fine. It's great. $200 is better than nothing. Right. But just imagine what could be done if it was $2,000.
Yes.
Because the community loved the program because they felt like it was giving the young people, one, something positive to do, two, something to help them atone for whatever it was that brought them before the court anyways. And people would come and they would want to give us money and be like, no, we can't take any money, or they want to, drop off waters and stuff. So, that was just a great program. I hope they bring it back once, the pandemic has subsided where it's safe to do it again. But I would really love to see forfeiture funds enhanced for these types of programs. And I would even love on the federal side to get back to where they were giving back grant money for
community programs.
Because really the ultimate goal of the juvenile justice system is to keep you from coming back.
Yeah.
And so it is cheaper to do these diversion programs than to lock somebody up. Well, locking somebody up can cost anywhere between $60 to $120 a day. So if we can find ways to avoid locking up people that don't really need to be locked up, then let's do that.
Right. Powerful.
I know, right? So we just wrapped it up, and we're getting to the end of the podcast. So we definitely appreciate you coming out.
Yes.
Now, what would you like to plug? You want to plug anything?
I don't really have anything to plug. The only thing that I would hope that anybody takes from listening to this podcast, other than, of course, looking to see if you qualify the student loan forgiveness, is to get out there and exercise your right to vote. Do not let these media people tell you that our president is not doing a good job. He is doing a great job. The numbers are showing that he is doing a great job. Could he be doing better? Absolutely. But don't let them constantly saying that the message that the Democrats are not being successful is really put out there to dissuade you from exercising your vote.
Right, exactly.
Because they're trying to get you in the mindset of, well, they're not doing anything. There's no difference between the parties. Absolutely would not have our first Black Supreme Court justice if it wasn't for the work of Democrats. Joe Biden in particular. Having 2 senators from the state of, could you imagine what that vote would be if we didn't have 2 senators from the state of Georgia? Some of those Republicans that crossed parties and voted, they would not. They would not. So it is so very important to go vote, check your registration status, because they're still purging people. The slogan that the governor has put out about the changes in the voting is that it's easier to vote and harder to cheat. That's not true. They went and looked at the way that folks were voting, and so many people took advantage of the ability to vote on off hours using drop boxes, and there's not been any instances of verified fraud from those drop boxes. So really, they just cut in drop boxes because people are using them. And that should scare you. I mean, even last week in our sign die was last week, which is the end of the legislative session. Everything that is going to the governor's desk goes. The Republicans put in a bill about keeping trans kids from being able to play in sports. Well, no matter how you feel about the children that identify that way, just remember it could be anything. Like, that was a bill that was presented on the eve of the end of the legislative session. All the legislators were not even given an opportunity to read it. They just voted on it basically strictly by party lines. That could have been anything. They could have slipped anything in that bill. And so that's why these local elections matter. I love that we've got people running for office in Houston County. People should have people to vote for. And so I know I'm dragging on, but just exercise. I'm always a big proponent of voting, no matter what.
We've got some great candidates.
Research your candidates. Vote that ballot from top to bottom. I still don't understand how the public commissioner race ended the way that it did, but people just didn't vote all the way down. They went and they said, okay, I know I'm supposed to vote for Warnock and Ossoff, and then they just didn't vote for the public service commissioner, and we missed out. But research your candidates, make sure your registration is good, make sure if you're planning on voting absentee, you understand that there's changes that have been made to how you can do that, and what needs to be done. Everything. I mean, not everybody, especially if you look at counties like big counties like Fulton and Gwinnett and all, I believe they had to be under some sort of camera recording. So there are protections in there, but because they didn't like the results of the people actually using it, they went back and took it away. And you can see just by looking at these long lines that you see, on CNN and Fox News, these long lines, people waiting 2 and 3 hours to vote. This is happening right here in Houston County. People having to wait 2 to 3 hours to vote. Like, the Secretary of State really should be helping these local boards of election so that people shouldn't have to wait 2 to 3 hours. And what troubled me, not the most, but really troubled me about the changes in the Senate Bill 202 was the outlawing of being able to give water.
That's what I was just about to say. Fanika brought that up.
Yeah, so instead of addressing why people are in line for 2 and 3 hours, you want to address people's solution to that. Because obviously, I mean, because even before then, you couldn't just, you can't give somebody a water that says vote for Joe or vote Trump in line. You can't do that. Nobody was doing that. But now you want to make it difficult to even hand out water.
Right.
And then they want to act like when all these people left and said, we're taking our business elsewhere, that's Stacey's fault. No. Yeah. Stacey Abrams didn't pass that bill. No. She didn't sign it. The Republicans passed the bill and the governor signed it. So you have to, again, say the same thing back to the DA's race. You have to ask why.
Why?
Voter suppression once again.
I mean, if everybody that was able to vote voted, we wouldn't be able to deal with it because we're not equipped. Right. They don't want people
and then
to
they
exercise their
handcuffing
right.
you from trying to go help the people so you can be equipped.
Yes.
Yeah. I tell you.
All right. So at the end of each podcast, we like to do a thing called 5 words. So Steve's gonna ask you a question. He's gonna give you 1 word. And then you just give us a response in 1 word. So
first thing come to your mind.
First thing come to your mind, just 1 word. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, now we take too long. I drop the crickets on you. Okay. You'll hear that right there. All right. Steve, go ahead.
Let's go. Politics.
Qualified.
Heard that.
Yeah.
Quick.
Facts.
The Constitution.
Amendable.
Yes, that's I kind of was looking for that.
Great word.
Yes. Hathaway School.
Important.
Okay. Community.
Everything.
I actually have 6 questions.
Go for it. Go for it.
Child protection.
Needed.
Houston County.
Growing.
All right. Get up for Erikka Williams. All right, Steve.
Yes, sir.
That was a good podcast.
Yes, it was fantastic.
And I knew it would be great bringing her on because I know she's gonna try. I know she's always about numbers, statistics, and facts, and she's always just always been a knowledgeable person. So
it's funny. I put that in my nose. I was like, I know you got the numbers on it.
She does. All right. So, just like how she was mentioning earlier about some of the candidates that, being aware of who's running and we've got, this is our political season. So we've got some great candidates that we're going to be bringing on to the show. Right now we're in talks. We're trying to schedule. We're getting Courtney Driver to come on. She's running for Houston 146 state representative. And we got a couple other seats that are getting filled in Houston County. We have those potential candidates or winners to come onto the podcast and express their views on why they're running and why we should vote for them and why the people should vote for them.
And just giving y'all more information.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. So and that's what the podcast is pretty much about. A lot of people always say, like the show is great, but what's your main angle? Well, our angle is really, to provide information because we like to talk about certain topics that we want to normalize, like mental health and why we have a shady governor and stuff like that, and and why and why it's important to understand voter suppression, which we reached out to Fanika Miller and we had her on the podcast. So we like to try to find the best guests.
And then we got new information tonight about student loans.
Yeah.
And we didn't. We weren't even going to talk about it, but we got great information on that today as well.
That's why I'm glad she dropped that. That's why I just let her just run with it, because it was great information because I live with somebody who's affected by student loans. My wife has 3 degrees. So as you can, count them up, so you can, obviously tell it's one of those things where you want to go to school, you want to be educated, but at the same time, there's a responsibility that comes with it in student loans. And that's just somebody, something that we've all dealt with or whatever. I've dealt with it before and I came up with a new plan the second go around and was like, well, I'm just going to get Flint to pay for it. Maybe I should have said their name.
But you did.
Beep it. Yeah.
It worked. It worked though.
I don't work for them no more, so it's all good.
Thanks for the degree, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, all right. So Catch us next time. I'm your host, BK.
And I'm your host, J. Steve.
Peace.
Thank you for checking out another episode of the Soul Fresh Podcast. If you want to catch the audio version, make sure you go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you want to check out the video version, make sure you head on over to YouTube. And when you get there, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and go ahead and turn on that notification bell. And in the meantime, until the next time, keep it 100, be blessed.